I think first when I was thinking about meals, I was like, my mind like first went to like what would be the most traditional or like the most like what most people would associate with like Korean food. But like I'm also not able to make that food very well. So I think ramen is like, I don't know, it's just easy to make. Like it's probably one of the first things that I learned how to make, and it's like such a staple.
Yes.
I feel like I grew up eating it, like I told you before, like we had like a brand that like our family would always buy, but then like my parents would grow up eating it, and like I think my mom said that her brother used to, or like my mom's grandma like would get her brother like boxes and boxes of instant ramen, because I think that's when it started getting big, like in the like 70s and 80s in Korea, and like their grandparents like favored her brother, so they would get him like his favorite food, which was ramen.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's like just a staple in every family, and it's like so familiar. Like if I don't know what I'm gonna eat, I'll usually eat this.
Yes. Yeah, that's such like a comfort meal too, I feel like, and it's so much more accessible and like quicker for most people.
Yeah. I feel like I'm on like a cooking show, like on the Food
I know.
Network or something.
It does kind of feel like that. Okay, do you want to just start eating?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So my mom and I had a big argument. We used to have really big arguments before, but I think it's gotten easier since I moved out, and we just see each other less regularly, and like just every time I see her, like I know that I can go home and like I can actually enjoy, I don't know, it's like more brief, so yeah, but I think I was staying with her like here for a night, and I was like getting really frustrated because she's just very controlling. For example, like I stay in like my brother's room when I'm here now, and I like put my backpack down and I like laid out all my things, like my clothes and stuff, and I like was laying in bed, and like I put my water bottle down on the floor. We don't have like a bedside table, and like because I wanted to have it just in case I had to drink water, and then my mom was like starting to move everything, like she put the water bottle on the desk, and I was like, I put it there on purpose because I want to be able to drink water. And then she was like refolding the clothes and like putting things the way that she wanted it. And like, I didn't say anything then, but I was just like I also wanted things that way for a reason.
Yeah.
And like, she just like, she notices everything. Like I can't, like if I use a different towel in the washroom, she'll ask me why I got a different towel, or like if she notices, like she's gonna come home and ask me like what I made and how I made it and everything. Literally, she notices everything.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going on a tangent now, but it's just context, I guess. And like she was also like that day she was like making comments about my appearance. Like I got like a vanilla latte, or no, I got like a peppermint mocha, which is not important, but
the details are important.
Yeah, exactly. And she was like, oh, you shouldn't get sugary drinks, like whatever.
Yeah.
And it was so frustrating, but I just wanted to go home. Like I just wasn't gonna say anything. And then during that time I was also helping her with like her ICBC like claims and everything, and like I was the one that was like calling and all that. And that day, like I said, I wanted to go home early, but then she was like, "Oh, I have to go print something for her at the library to help her make a return." So then we had to go to the post office after, and then she wanted to go to Costco and stuff. So I was just getting so frustrated.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Can we just not go to Costco?" And then she got mad because she said that she was feeling like I was like mad because I had to do things for her.
Yeah. And
I said I wasn't mad because of that. I was mad because like I was just frustrated because she wants me to help her with all of these things that are like pretty, I don't know, like complex tasks. Not the printing, but like the ICBC stuff.
Yeah, it's difficult.
And yet like she doesn't trust me to like put things where I want to put them, or like just manage like my own life. And I think she was still feeling like I was mad at her for like I just didn't want to help her, and I was annoyed with her for that. but she was like, I don't have a choice whether you help me or not. Like, I don't even know if you're doing it properly. I just have to trust that you are. Because she was basically saying, like, I have no choice but to trust you with these processes.
Yeah.
And I think I was also just feeling like she was being, like, ungrateful. And I'm losing track of the story now, but she said, yeah, she just kept saying, like, that I didn't want to help her. And when I said, like, I feel like, oh, and then the conversation went to, like, how she comments about my appearance all the time. And she was, like, saying that it's actually it's for my benefit.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is that for my benefit? And she said it's because she wants me to be healthy.
Yes.
And I said, that has nothing to do with my health. And she was basically just, like, turning it around on me, saying that, like, I was ungrateful for her caring about me. And she was like, fine, you can, she was like, fine, you can gain 1,000 pounds for all I care. And she just started acting out, but it was, like, so frustrating because in the end, like, it was me that was having to comfort her. Like, initially, like, I just wasn't really saying anything, and then she tried to, like, apologize, but then I was just, like, I was still upset, so I didn't really, like, reciprocate. And then she got mad at that. So she was kind of just acting like a child, honestly. And she got really upset. She was, like, saying that she feels like she's a burden to me, like I don't even like spending time with her or, like, having her around. And she said that she just feels like she's a burden to, like, everyone. Like, it was just so like
much.
Because she was like, oh, like, I don't have anyone here, and, like, I have to, like, try to be as little of an inconvenience to my kids as possible. And, like, she was just getting really upset, and, like, obviously I'm gonna feel sad for her. And she was like, but the funny thing was that she was like, do you not even care that I feel that way? And I was like, I do care, and I think that's very sad. But you're not able to offer me that same that same response. And I was like, I try to, like, think of lots of, like, activities that we can do together and, like, whatever, and, like, I hope you know that I'm trying. But then she was like, well, then why can't you see that I'm trying? And she was like, for every 100 times that I want to comment about your appearance, I only say it once. And I was like, okay. The one time is, like, still bad. And she was just turning it around on me, and then I was just like not really. I felt bad for her, but and then it was fine. Like, we kind of made up after, but when I got home, I was just, like, so frustrated because I was like, I feel like every argument that we have will ultimately go back to the same thing, which is, like, this dynamic that we have where, like, she feels like she's going to be, like, a burden to me and my brother, and, like, I feel like I can't be upset about, like, things that, like, a kid will normally
be upset about
with their parents, because I don't know, like, our dynamic is just different because, like, we're, like, it doesn't always feel like, I feel like it's not just, like, my mom taking care of us, which she obviously does, but, like, it's very, like, mutual. And so that was frustrating because I was like, I feel like there's just this, like, burden that, like, I will literally never be able to repay. Which I'm sure, like, lots of like, immigrants feel that way, but I think it's exacerbated by, like, thinking about, like, what is my mom doing, like, if I'm not here? Like, she goes to work and stuff, but, like, it just feels like her whole, like, I felt this in high school as well, and it's, like, because she's, like, so controlling that I feel like her whole life revolves around me, and that's so much pressure. But then, like, to feel that is, like, I feel guilty because it's, like, she made that, like, to her that's, like, a sacrifice. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you feel like it was hard to leave, like to go to UBC and not live at home anymore? Was that difficult for you, like having?
I think that it actually wasn't that difficult, but I think I went through a phase where we didn't really talk that much, and honestly, like I just felt so, like I liked having that freedom, but I like had a dream or something like a few months into living like on campus, where it was just like my mom like spending time like doing things by herself, and that made me feel really sad. But then like because of the pandemic and everything, like we ended up spending every day together. And I feel like it was like difficult, but I guess that was a nice time, because now I'm like looking back and thinking like if not for that time, then we would have spent like the last 4 years apart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it seems like because maybe your mom had to rely on you so much growing up, and now that her way of establishing control or feeling more like the parent is to micromanage you. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. That does make sense. I guess that makes me feel better.
Do you feel like some of that has, like your experience with your mom or dynamic with your mom has carried over now, like your relationship with your roommates, for example, now that you live by yourself?
Yeah, I feel like I can feel myself acting like my mom, and it's so frustrating. Like when I had that argument with my mom, I was like, there's all these things that I don't like about her, but like what does that say about me? And I'm like the same level of particular, I think. I mean, I would hope that I'm not like controlling, but I'm like I like things to be done my way. Like I don't trust other people to do it, and I think that's not just because it's from the way that my mom is, but because of the way that I grew up. Like I'm used to doing things by myself.
Yes.
And so I don't trust other people to do it the way that I want to. Like my boyfriend has ADHD, and so he struggles like with like planning and organization, and I'm like I really like planning things, so a lot of the time like I'll plan and like initiate certain activities and stuff. But I think I realized that there was one small thing. I think that I had like a shared playlist with someone, and they rearranged all the songs that I put in, and I was like, oh, it's nice to like go to some, like just show up to something and have it done. Yeah, that feeling was so like novel to me that I think I realized that I wanted to try feeling that more. So I told my boyfriend that I wanted him to try to like plan one like festive date for us.
Yeah.
And I was still like, told him like weeks in advance, but like I would still remind him like, oh, this is gonna be my last reminder, like don't forget to plan. And I was like, are you planning, like whatever? And then he started planning, and he was like getting stressed, and then I started getting stressed because he was like he wanted to do this specific activity, but I was like, I don't want us to spend that much money. And then he was like, oh, I don't know what to do, like whatever. And then I was like, you know what, you just don't have to plan it, like I'll just do it. Yeah. Like I started getting stressed, and I started feeling guilty, and he was like, no, it's fine, I'll do it. And I was like, no, like please, can I just do it? Because it was like so stressful for me, and it felt so unnatural. And that was when I was like, I actually have a problem. Like this is not, I don't think I've ever let go of anything in my entire life. I've never done that before. Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, as you were telling the story, I was like, I think I can predict what's gonna happen at the end of it. But I feel like you're working on it though. I think the fact that your reaction to the plays was like, actually this is kind of nice, like I want to experience this, shows that you're like willing to let that in, you want to let go, and I feel like that is really important. I
wonder if it's also just the people that I surround myself around. Like I think that my roommates are very passive and just like malleable. But I think that I do notice when they're like, it's nice to have friends that are like, oh, you seem like you need this, or like they just remember things about me that like I wouldn't admit to myself even. Yeah, and it's like, honestly, it's interesting that I chose a partner that dynamic is like upheld in, where like it's kind of, I mean, it is kind of like a parent-child dynamic
A little bit,
in some
yes.
ways, like if it's in extremes.
Yeah. My mom definitely does act like a child in conflict. She still does this now, but not as often, because I guess we have a better relationship now, or communicate a little better maybe, but she used to do the silent treatment a lot for me as a kid. Like when she would get angry, she would just not speak to me.
Yeah.
And that was so hard growing up. It was so difficult.
Is that normal? Like, do all parents do that?
I don't know. But it really scared me a lot. And I feel like now even, like if I message a friend and it takes them longer to reply, I'm like, it's because they're angry at me. Like that is my immediate reaction.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that's where it stems from because of what I received as a kid.
So were your parents like passive aggressive?
Yeah, my mom definitely was pretty passive aggressive. Yeah, she'd say like really hurtful things when she was angry, which I used to rationalize as that's what everyone does when they're angry. They say mean, like hurtful things, and she literally said that to me verbatim before. She's like, well, everyone just does that when they're angry.
My mom said that in our last argument. She was like, I hope you know that. Like when I was really, like she used to not apologize at all, so it was actually progress, but she was like, I hope you know that like what I said when I was mad, I was just so hurt that like, she literally was like, I was just so hurt that I just wanted to hurt you back. But I didn't mean it, and I was like, well, don't say it then. And she was like, well, people do that when they're angry, and I was like, I don't. Like, I never do that, so why do you have to do it? And she was like, well, maybe you don't, but most people do.
Oh my God. Yeah. That is something my mom would say too.
I don't know if this, like, if you feel this way, but I feel like because of those interactions, I'm like, I think it's hard for me to process now, like when someone says something hurtful and like to process the weight of it, because I'm like, that's what everyone does. Like it's normal. And also like, my mom would literally like pretend to like pack her bags. Like she'd be like, I'm leaving.
My mom has done something similar.
Yeah.
Actually.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I feel like that has made me desensitized to being like, I think I like less now, thankfully, but like in relationships before, I would be like, we would have like one argument or like I'd be really mad and I would just be like, okay, we're just gonna break up. Like I don't want to be with you anymore.
Yeah, it's
and
over.
Then like the day after I'm like, I didn't actually mean that. But then like it's hard, it's easy for me to come back from it because that happens all the time where like my mom's like, I'm leaving, and then the next day it's fine.
Yeah.
But for other people that's obviously it takes quite a toll on them. Yeah.
Recently, but my algorithm is a lot of people that have gone no contact with their family, and I've been thinking about it, just like what that means and what it feels like for different people in different families, I guess. And thinking about in the context specifically about an immigrant family and immigrant parents, I'm like, I could never do that, no matter how, like, let's say if my relation with my parents go really terribly, I don't think I could ever go no contact, because how could I do that?
That just seems like impossible.
It feels impossible.
Yeah. That's like, I feel like it's just impossible to imagine because I think when non-immigrant people do that, or even if they go through like a phase of that with their parents, like I feel like they probably know that their parents, at least like physically on the outside, like their lives will go on. Like they'll go to work, they'll see friends, or like they'll see family and stuff. But for me, I'm just like I don't know what my mom would do. And I think that's like another big thing where like it's frustrated me when I've had friends like complain about divorced parents, because I'm like, at least they have a community, like at least they speak the language here and they can look for a community. But I know that like for my mom that like she has people who speak Korean here, that's like her community, but it's like different, like she's not really like part of anything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's completely different. I also like, I never used to really talk about my relationship with my parents, but also like my mom specifically growing up, but I feel like certain friends could tell that things are like different. And I once had a friend tell me that she got really mad at my mom about something, like because I told her about something that happened, I guess, between me and my mom, and my friend then got mad for me. And I remember feeling so conflicted about it because it's like nice to have someone external that's almost like standing up for you, but then I was like, you don't know my mom though, like you can't, like I almost got mad at her actually. I was like, how dare you, like
That's fair.
yeah, I was like, you don't know what it's like, and like it's like nice of her to notice that, I guess, but at the moment I was like, you don't know my mom though, like it's almost like I felt this like protectiveness. I was like, you don't know what it's like.
Oh yeah, I get that. Yeah, when people are just like, you should just stop talking to her, I'm like,
that's not how
why would I stop talking to her? Yeah. At the same time though, I feel like I also get annoyed when friends are like, I feel bad for your mom, or like something like that. I'm like, why are you standing up for her?
And I'm like, you don't get it, like it's not like that. It's not as simple as it is.
Yeah. Have you watched the movie Minari?
I did, yes.
That movie was like, oh, it was so good. Yeah. I watched it once. I think I watched it with a friend, and then I watched it by myself. Like within like the span of like a week maybe. I watched it with a friend, and then I watched it by myself. And then I watched it with my mom. And my mom cried watching it because I think there's like a scene where the mom's, like the grandma first arrives.
Yes.
And they're bringing all the food from Korea.
Yeah.
And like that, like I've literally seen that exact scene happen in real life before with my grandma and her mom. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what you like? Yeah, like what is it about Minari that you like so much?
I guess it's just like I like coming of age movies, and like just movies where it's just more about the characters in general, but it was very refreshing to see it about characters that like you can actually relate to a lot. Like I like Lady Bird. I think Lady Bird, the mother-daughter relationship, is pretty, I'm sure it's quite relatable for like a lot of women, but I think Minari had like an added layer because it's like the nuances. Like I mean in Lady Bird they definitely had a complicated relationship where it wasn't just like I'm gonna stop talking to you and stuff, but I think I can't relate to that dynamic because I'm like, at least you guys can communicate.
Yeah, they were communicating for sure. Yeah.
Like when I'm arguing with my mom, I have to like water down my feelings to the most like basic words because I don't know how else to say it in Korean. And like I would love to be able to like have a heart to heart with my mom that's actually like accurately encapsulates like how we both feel. So that part is not relatable to me.
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess Minari is kind of like that because it's like I mean the kids are still young, but I don't know, you know what I mean.
Yes,
yeah.
I do. I've felt that before for sure with the language part because my Cantonese is not that great, so those complex big feelings in English that I can speak fluently to, I can't do that in Cantonese. So true. I am watering it down. It's like the most basic blocks of my emotion that I'm trying to share.
Yeah. It's frustrating, and it's like for some people, like if they speak the same language as their parents, it's like even when you have trouble, like there's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, I imagine, because once you get the tools, you can get there. But like I don't know how we would do that because we have the most basic
tools.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually stalked your Letterboxd.
Oh.
Like last week-ish in preparation for this because I've always seen you as someone who is always watching a movie or has watched a movie recently.
That's so surprising. I don't really watch that many movies.
I don't know why, I just have that perception of you. Maybe also because like Emma usually watches movies with you. So I feel like sometimes when she talks about like her hangouts with you, it's like you watched a movie together. And also I feel like I also don't follow a lot of people on Letterboxd, but I feel like you're very active on there. Or maybe when I do log in, it's like there's a new activity from Jin. But I guess one thing I was curious about, I'm making some assumptions here, but I feel like you do actively look for like Asian movies, like East Asian movies, about stories or people that like look like you or like familiar to you. And so I guess I just wanted to ask, like, I guess maybe the answer feels obvious, but like what motivates you to like look for those stories? Like what captures your attention? Like when you saw Minari, like what was it that you were like, yes, I want to watch that?
That's such a hard question. I don't know, like, that's like interesting because I don't think I've like consciously looked for things, maybe more recently. But definitely I am drawn to it. I think that what I liked about Minari and other like Asian, like movies about Asian stories or like Korean movies that I've seen is like, I feel like it gives me like context for my life, and also like it gives me like the language to think about and describe my life and experiences, because I feel like there are a lot of little things that you experience that maybe you think about passively, but you're like you wouldn't choose specific memories to like certain specific memories to strongly identify with. But for example, like in Minari, there's one scene where the mom is like cleaning the kids' ears. And they're laying on her lap, and my brother and I used to do that all the time because it was like such a satisfying feeling. And it's just being able to identify with that, like not just, I don't know, I guess not just seeing my life as like a passing thing, like having roots.
Roots.
And I think Korean movies that I like watching, it's like it gives me that same feeling of like gaining roots, because I like watching like a lot of like historic fiction, I think, and that I like it because I learn about like my family more. I think that a lot of like modern Korean history is like, there's so much like crazy stuff that happened, and it's all within like the last like 40-50 years that it has like directly impacted like every Korean wherever you are in the world now. And I like watching those movies because I imagine like what my family
went through,
what was doing during that time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I took a course this semester about like contemporary Korean culture.
Yes.
And I was recommended that course by friends because they say it's like really easy and like lighthearted, like I don't know, like K-pop and K-drama and whatever. But the section that I took, it was actually quite heavy because we were learning about a lot of like the political events that happened as after the Korean War, and like as South Korea was like developing more. And I like the readings that I was doing, it was like, it genuinely it didn't feel like assignments. Like it was so interesting because I didn't know any of that before. Like there were a lot of like demonstrations, and like there was like military dictatorships and stuff when my mom was growing up. And it was crazy to think about my family existing during that time. But then I also like dreaded going to class because I was like, I don't want to, like, this is so sad to think about because it's so real. Like it actually did like I think my grandpa, he lost his younger sister when she was 4 during the Korean War. And like my grandma had to like drop out of school in middle school to like work to support her family. Like it's so real, and every Korean has a story like that. Yeah, but I really enjoyed that class because I got because it was also like a good conversation piece with my mom. Like I was hearing things about that she experienced that I never even knew to ask about before.
Yeah. That's so awesome that you had that in that class, because it's true, if not from our parents, then where else will we learn these sorts of things and like our family's histories?
Yeah. I was so envious of like, for like Remembrance Day, when people are like, oh, my grandparents or like my grandpa fought in this war, or it's just something like having like stories.
Yeah, that they know that.
Yeah, and it like gets passed down. Like I never had that. And I mean, until recently, like I didn't even have like old pictures, like childhood pictures, because they were all at my grandparents' house and we just didn't know that they existed. But when we went recently, we found it. Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, that's like something I think about too, is that, because like my parents and I, we just don't really talk about stuff in the past. So I actually don't know a lot about my parents' stories. And then I only have like one grandma left on my dad's side. So sometimes I'm like, as people pass away, as they eventually do, I'm like, where will those stories go? Like, if they don't tell me now, like, how else will I feel connected? And like, where are my roots? And how do I remain connected to them?
Do you know if they have any like records?
They might. One time, every now and then I go through, we have this like big drawer of photo books. So sometimes I look through them just to like look at my childhood self. Yeah. But in like random places, there are pictures of like, there's like a family photo of my dad when he was probably like 7 or 8 with the rest of his siblings and my grandparents. It's like a black and white photo. It was so strange seeing it for the first time. Like, that's my dad as a kid. It's so weird to look at.
Do you ever like feel emotional when you see your parents younger?
Yeah. My parents have photo books of their honeymoon, I think. So they're like posing in front of like touristy places. Yeah. And they're like wearing matching t-shirts.
Oh my gosh.
And like they would like clearly take turns taking photos. It'd be like a photo of my mom in front of the same
Where did they go?
bridge. All over. Like I know they went to Hawaii. They also went, I think they were in Taiwan as well. I think they went to Japan. Ooh.
Like
they just did like a little tour around the world, I guess.
Yeah, that's so cute.
But yeah, it's like so strange to see them pose in front of monuments. Like my mom first, and I flipped the page, and it's my dad in the same spot because they clearly switched. Yeah. The first time I discovered, I like cried because I was like I knew, obviously my parents had a life before me, but it's so weird to see them living.
I know. And it's also like, oh my gosh, I can't even look at like pictures of my mom when she was younger because I'm like, you don't know what's coming. It's so sad. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's such a way to put it. My mom doesn't have a lot of photos of when she was kid, but she has one. And I remember one time she was showing it to me and she was telling me how like her sister like cut her hair for her, like messed up, and then she had to take a photo for school or something. And I was like holding back tears like as she described the photo. I was like, this is very emotional for me.
Oh my god. That's like, I don't know. That makes me not want to have kids because I'm like, I don't want my kids to experience that feeling. That was another thought that I had when I had the argument where I was like, I just don't want to have kids because I don't want them to feel like this burden.
Yes.
But it's just like inevitable, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe they'll see this and they're like, that was them when they were growing. That was their life before.
For everything. So, a question I've been unintentionally asking every person is that if you could say something to your younger self.
Oh no.
I know. What would you say? Or like, would you say anything?
I don't know what I would say.
I know, it's a hard question.
What would you say?
You're the first person that's turning around. Most people are just like, damn, I have to answer this question now. I'm not too sure exactly what I would say, like what specific context am I thinking about, or maybe even like what age am I thinking about. But one thing that someone shared was that they would just tell their younger self that it'll be fine, you'll figure it out. And so I feel like some iteration of that is what I would share. Yeah, that you do figure out and things do technically get better. Like you understand yourself and other things better. Yeah, just like what you're experiencing right now isn't the end. Yeah, there's something else beyond it, is what I would say, I think.
Yeah, I guess something along those lines. Like, I think I would want to tell my high school self that nothing is that serious.
Yeah.
But also just that, like, I think I would want them to think about that, but also that to know that it's perfectly acceptable to like.
Do you feel like it's the end of the world?
Yeah, and to just like care so much about something, because I feel like if I could change anything now, like I think once I moved out, like I just ran with that statement, like nothing is that serious, like everything is fine.
Yeah.
And I think it's been nice to be able to like live more indulgently and like restfully, but I think in that process I've kind of like turned off a part of like caring, like really caring about something, to like where like the stakes feel really high. And so I think I would want to like keep that part. But then also like to know that some things just aren't that serious.
It's true. It's really not that bad. Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, I think that it's okay to care too. Yeah, that it's okay that if it feels like the world is ending and that it's a disaster, it's good to feel those feelings actually, rather than to feel nothing at all. Yeah.
I think I'm almost like envious of that, because I think that I see like teenagers on TikTok or like Instagram where they have these like, I follow accounts where they make like collages and stuff, and I feel like you're so creative when you're a teenager, because you're inspired by so many things.
Yes.
And I think I felt like that too. Like my journal is way more interesting then than it was now, because I was just trying random stuff. And I feel like I wish I had that now. Like I wish I had that feeling now. It's like when you listen to like an album and you're like, this is my this is my favorite album.
Yes.
And, like this plays over like all these moments and whatever. I would just want them to like just like cherish that. Yeah.
That's so nice. Thank you. Okay. Are we good? Hooray! Yay. Thank you so much.
No problem.
How do you feel?
That was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay, I'm glad.